Good evening and welcome back to Byline. This is our public affairs show here at Amherst Media, and it's co-sponsored by the Amherst League of Women Voters. We're trying to help people here in town keep up with the changing dynamics of our new town government. And most of the time we have counselors and town staff, et cetera, but occasionally we have people from committees that are not town council committees but are busy doing work in town. And so today we have a return guest with John Hornik, who is from our Housing Trust. And you're the chairman, correct?
I'm the chair, yes.
You are the chair. And we'll talk a little bit and remind people who you are in a minute. We also have Joanne Campbell from the Valley CDC. She came across the river today to have a conversation with us. Welcome.
Thank you.
And the Valley CDC does serve Amherst, as you will find out in just a minute. But let's start with John. Please just remind us, the Housing Trust is?
The Housing Trust was established about 5 years ago by a town meeting. Its goal really is to support the development of affordable housing for low-income or lower-income individuals. That can include families, elderly persons, individuals who are homeless, individuals who are working and simply cannot afford the rents or afford to buy a house most of the time in Amherst without some form of support. We have 9 members, and those members are appointed by the town manager with the approval of town council. In fact, the town manager himself is now a member of the Housing Trust.
Oh, terrific.
A new member, who really welcomed having Paul on the council.
So he appointed himself?
He appointed himself.
Well, he couldn't actually. The town council appointed him at his recommendation.
Yes.
Excellent.
The state statute requires that a key town official be part of this, and the more Paul looked at the statute, the more he felt that it pointed to him. Mm-hmm. So that's why he's with us.
So you're fully, all the seats are filled on your board, but at some point some of those seats do turn over. So if people are interested someday in serving on the trust, they could fill out the form online and get themselves in the queue to be considered when there are openings.
Absolutely, or if they have questions, they can contact me.
Excellent.
Through the town or just directly.
And do you have any subcommittees that people who are not on your board get to apply to sit on?
We do. We have a homelessness subcommittee that does not require a formal appointment. We've had other committees in the past. There are no active committees at the moment, but we're looking to create a new committee that would focus on the issue of access to rental housing in Amherst and how we can improve access.
So when that committee gets created, how do people know it's time to apply?
Honestly, Stan, I have to admit, we don't have a formal
process. Stand by on that one, folks.
Right.
We'll figure that out, and we'll try to find a way to make sure you know so that people in town can step up to the plate and try to help out. And so now let's talk with you, Joanne, for a minute about who you are and where you come from. You live in Northampton.
Yes.
You're the executive director of the Valley CDC.
Yep.
And the Valley CDC is?
Valley CDC is a nonprofit corporation. We've been around since 1988. We are, as a nonprofit, we have a board of directors who provides oversight to the agency and strategic planning, and those folks are locally based. They either live or work in our primary communities of Amherst, Northampton, East Hampton, or Hadley. Currently, we don't have anyone sitting on, on the board from Amherst. We've had some folks who used to live in Amherst, like Peter Jessup, who's our board chair, and we also have a number of committees where board members can sit. So we have a number of committees, and we have some Amherst. We have a tenant who lives in one of our buildings in Amherst is on our community engagement committee.
Excellent. And so you work on affordable housing and?
Home ownership program and small business. So we've developed probably about close to 300 units of affordable housing in Amherst, Northampton, and East Hampton, with the majority of the units being in Northampton. And we just finished the lumber yard, for folks who are familiar with where the old lumber yard building was on Pleasant Street, 55 apartments, family housing. And we have a project under development, very similar to a project we're going to talk about today, Sargent House on Bridge Street, we're in construction for 31 small studio apartments for a variety of
And again, that's over in
populations.
Northampton.
It's over in
But
Northampton.
you've recently been working on a project here in Amherst, so as long
Correct.
as you have the talking stick, why don't we talk about 132 Northampton Road?
Right.
Tell us what's going on with that.
Okay, so I think just a little bit of history is that we've been asked by the town of Amherst to find a location that could serve housing for single persons with a variety, from people who are coming out of homelessness, people maybe with developmental or mental health disabilities, and people who are low-wage earners and retirees, a whole slew of folks, but basically the common thread was their low income. And so we had a planning grant that's from the Community Development Block Grant Program that the town is a mini entitlement community. And we worked for about 2 years looking at sites in town. It's very hard to find housing and be able to get site control of it because of the great demand for student housing. We were able to finally find a property that we think is very appropriate for this kind of housing on Route 9, which is the 132 Northampton Road. And so our plan is to develop 28 units of single person housing, again, small studios, which will have a bathroom and kitchenette, about 250 square feet, each apartment with some common area, as well as support service area and property management staff. I can talk about who we think we're going to house there.
That would be great. Totally new construction?
No. So there's
It's
a single...
renovation?
A mix
Partly,
of both.
Okay.
Correct. So the 132 Northampton Road is a single-family house currently on slightly less than an acre of land. And we plan to take part of the house down, but keep sort of the main bones of the house and build an addition to that.
Okay. And that'll be 28 units. And you've already mentioned the kinds of individuals that you hope to house there. Can you say any more about that?
Yep. So, I mean, our plan at this point in time is 10 units would be set aside for people coming out of homelessness. 2 units would be set aside for clients of the Department of Mental Health. 8 units would be set aside for people who are earning up to 50% of the median income, which is about $30-something thousand, and 8 units would be set aside for folks up to 80% of the area median income, which for a single person is about $49,000.
So it's a kind of mixed-use property. There's going to be lots of different kind of people living there.
Yes.
And once everybody's settled in there, it's going to be like any other small apartment building that you'd find anywhere else in town or elsewhere.
Yes.
Okay. And did I hear you say that it's going to be staffed?
Yeah, so, I mean, again, we are working for, and I can give you an update on sort of where we're at. So we're working on a project eligibility letter, which allows us to go for zoning for under the comprehensive permit. But currently, we would have some level of property management staff as well as community resident services person. So we haven't worked out all those details yet.
So there'll be support services in the building as well. So people who are in transition or are struggling with certain things, there's going to be somebody there with the proper training and access to other support services.
Correct.
And again, you think this will be open and operating, assuming that everything falls into place, permits and everything else?
Probably 2022.
2022. Okay, very good. Thank you. Stand by 2022. And now let's have a quick update on East Street.
Yes.
You talked about that the last time you were on the show. Where are we now?
Yes, the last time we talked about a project at the old East Street School site, which may or may not include the school depending upon issues with lead and asbestos in the building and whether those can be managed or not. Town Council approved the use of that site for housing development last April, and the town put a request for proposals on the street, and the due date now for proposals is mid-October, October 15th. So we are hoping to see proposals from developers. We expect to see a minimum of a minimum of 16 units that would be affordable on the site. There may be additional units as well. We're looking to see what the developers propose. I can't imagine more than a total of 30 units, and it could well be less because it's not a very large site. But we are looking toward proposals within the next week or two, and we hope we do see a developer coming forward. The developer would receive the authorization once they go through appropriate steps to get a 99-year lease on the property and to build whatever is proposed that the town approves.
Excellent. And it will be competitive in terms of selecting a developer?
Yes, the request for proposal is open, and the town has had a number of inquiries. At this point, I couldn't say how many are likely to bid on it.
Okay. And Valley CDC, interested or not?
So we did receive the RFP. We have reviewed it. We've participated in the site plan visit and have submitted a number of questions to the town procurement officer.
So stay tuned as to whether or not you actually apply.
Correct.
And we can't talk any more about this
Correct.
because we don't want to sour your ability to compete for the project
Sure.
if you decide to put it in. So that's a summary of where we are on the various projects that we talked about last time. But now let's look to the future in the final 10 minutes we have. You folks have developed a new policy?
Yes.
And did that policy go before the town council?
Yes. Policies.
And give us the highlights.
The policy is in draft. It should be reviewed not only by town council, but the planning board and the Community Preservation Act committee, because taken together, all those groups have a significant role in town government on what happens to community housing. And the goal of the Housing Trust is to put everybody on the same page. So
Okay.
we recognize that there is a significant need in town, but as it stands now, the town does not have any goals with respect to development of new housing. That is, the goals aren't specific enough. They're general about in what kind of housing we'd like to see, but we don't have a number. And that's one of the critical things that we think we need a new town policy for.
Is the number.
The number.
That's the key.
I think the number is the most important thing, but there are other aspects of policy that are important. We are proposing that the town commit to develop 250 new affordable units over the next 5 years or so, that those units would be for lower income families, for individuals, some of whom have been homeless, and all of that is critical because we really do have a need. One of the things I've recently learned is the Amherst Housing Authority, which distributes HUD mobile vouchers or Section 8 vouchers in town, has a great deal of difficulty when they give vouchers to people in having them actually be able to rent in Amherst. In the last 2 calendar years, 2017 and 18, they released 70 vouchers. Only 16 of those were leased up in Amherst, or less than a quarter.
Not enough supply.
Not enough supply of affordable units. And so that's just one example. We know there are long waiting lists at Olympia Oaks and other places, so we need new units in town.
And the 132 Northampton Road and East Street School, could those apply toward the your stated goal of 250?
Yes, they absolutely would.
Okay.
We also have other new projects that include affordable units but aren't exclusively affordable at North Square in North Amherst,
Yeah.
on University Avenue, and another potential development on Route 9.
And where are we, I'm sure you've looked at this, in relation to the state's law that says each community should have at least 10% of their housing stock, quote, affordable for the variety of constituencies you've been mentioning. So where are we in relation to 10% now, and where would 250 put us in relationship to the 10% goal for all communities?
Okay, we have a little under 1,100 units that are counted in the so-called subsidized housing inventory of the state, which puts us a little over 11%. So that's good. We're over 10%. The specific developments we were talking about would give us another 100 units toward the 250, and then ideally we'd get 250 on top of that. So obviously that's going to add to the 1,100 that we have now. On the other hand, there's other development for non-subsidized housing that is occurring pretty regularly in town now. And so as a consequence, in order to maintain a level above 10%, our current 11 isn't bad, might be bad if it was a little bit more than that, we need to keep developing new affordable units to stay up with the development of the non-subsidized housing.
Mm-hmm. And does your policy address the issue of the relationship to the state's goal of the 10%? Do you have any kind of policy statements in there that relate to what the town's posture should be in that regard?
We don't specifically mention that, but it's clear that the 250 units will keep us above the 10% level. And that's one of the issues that's come up in discussion with town council and with others. Okay. The town also has resources that we expect to be devoted to this. That's something that the town has done in the past. Primarily Community Preservation Act funds have been used. There's community development block grant funds. We're now starting to use, as with East Street, town surplus property. And also, most recently, the town developed a tax incentive financing program that helped to support the North Square project in North Amherst. So the town needs to put up some money, although honestly, that money is used to leverage a much larger proportion of the development costs, primarily from grants or contracts with the Department of Housing and Community Development.
Okay. Are there any other policy statements that are embedded in your new proposed policy for the town that we haven't touched on that you want to tell the viewers about so that they can understand when they hear more about this what are the elements of this plan?
Well, consistent with the goals of the Housing Trust, the focus of the new development should be on people who have lower income, whether they're families or individuals. And when we say lower income, we're not talking about people who make very, very little money exclusively. That would include, for example, for a family of 4, a level of income that would be around $71,000 a year, according to the current HUD standards for 80% area median income. So we're talking about there, and also for individuals where the standard's around $49,000, individuals who work in our community. They work for the town, they work for the university, they work for Amherst College, and these are people who find it very difficult to either purchase housing or rent housing in Amherst because all of those costs are going up. So it's important that we pay attention as a town to the needs of that population. We don't want to be, as a colleague of mine said, a town of only students and empty nesters, which is exactly what the population trend is right now.
At this particular point. Any other policy points that you want to raise?
Well, one of the major obstacles to this kind of development, not just in Amherst but across the nation, is in zoning. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons why we're talking to the planning board and bringing them into this as well. For example, one person mentioned the possibility of expanding the inclusionary zoning bylaw to require inclusionary zoning for new developments of a certain size. Equally significant, the town received a grant from Mass Housing Finance to look into the development of a 40R district. A 40R district is it's really an overlay of the town zoning map. So there's a portion of the community that's defined in which we would allow more intense development than the zoning laws currently permit. So, for example, if you have the center of town, we've already seen the development of some new larger buildings that might include some others that would increase the population downtown, that would include 20% affordable housing under state guidelines for 40R. The town would also receive funds from the state to support the town itself, and it would also receive funds for the schools, if those included families with students, adding to the school system, and it would make the town a priority for infrastructure funding from Mass Works. So there are a variety of benefits to the town going into the 40R program, and we think this makes sense for Amherst. On October 24th, actually, there'll be I think it's the third or fourth of public meetings to discuss 40R, when our consultants will come in and talk about what they think the town should do. And an important piece of that is design guidelines, so that we don't get anything developed, but the kinds of new construction make sense for Amherst.
And so it's interesting because most of what we've been talking about so far sounds like individuals, whether they're seniors or homeless or persons with disability challenges or mental health problems. So it's the most of those we've been talking about have been about individuals and trying to make sure that we can have places for people who want to live in towns to stay in town based on affordability. Now you're talking a little bit more on the family side, because 40R basically assumes you're going to be attracting some more families, or you're going to be holding families in town, and they may be growing families. And so the state, recognizing that that's been a barrier to approving affordable housing projects for families, created this new program, the 40R, which is not so new anymore, but hopefully they're continuing to fund it because it provides that important school subsidy within the 40R program that really helps make it possible for communities that want to make sure that there's room for affordable housing for families, that there is that help.
Yeah, and families need to be an important component of this program. Since the year 2000, we estimate that Amherst has 700 fewer families with school-age children, and according to data from the State Department of Education, there are over 1,000 fewer school-age children living in Amherst. So, as I said earlier, we don't want to become a community
Of
exclusively
students and elders. Yeah.
Right. We need to bring families back into the communities.
And hold families that are in the community, so they don't have to leave to find housing they can afford.
Yes.
Hickory Ridge. What do you have to say about that?
The town is poised to purchase Hickory Ridge. It's really up to town council at this point. Hickory Ridge, whether people know or do not know, is a golf course, or former golf course now, that's on West Pomeroy Lane. The plan would be for most of the golf course to go into conservation and to become part of Amherst land in that area. There's a section of it also would be leased back to the current owners of Hickory Ridge for a solar development. But there's also a strip of land right along West Pomeroy Lane that could be used for a variety of purposes, including the development of housing. There's an old golf club, which could become housing, or people have talked about as a possibility of a senior center. You could see two-family houses, perhaps developed by Habitat for Humanity, going up along West Pomeroy. So there are a variety of affordable housing possibilities there, which I think are great. We can't really go into too much detail at this point because, as I said, the town has actually not yet approved the purchase. But once that happens, those discussions will occur.
But it would be a vision of a mixed-use area with conservation, housing, some commercial, and maybe some public entities such as the senior center. First time I've heard that. That's very exciting. As a resident of South Amherst, I'm very excited about that idea. And we have a wonderful center downtown, but it's really stretched to the max in terms of what can fit into that building. So the final minute or so here, November 4th, you have a forum.
November 4th is a housing forum where there'll be discussion of the local issues in housing, but another key part of our agenda for that meeting is hearing from Senator Joanne Comerford and Representative Mindy Dahm about what's going on at state level, both respect to state budget changes and potential legislative changes that would help us locally as well as elsewhere to develop more affordable housing. And we're looking forward to that event. It will be 6:45 p.m. on Monday, November 4th at the Unitarian Universalist Society Fellowship Hall, or Social Hall.
Social Hall. Well, terrific.
So I look forward to seeing people there.
Excellent. And let me go back one more second on the, I meant to ask you with regard to the plan, the study, the policy, excuse me, the Housing Trust proposed policy. Does it require approval of the town council?
Yes. Again, I think the key is putting everybody on the same page so that, for example, if the town council approves the policy, listen here, town councilors, and then we come back with a plan for Hickory Ridge or the section of it which is buildable, we can say, well, this is the policy that we've all agreed to, and part of our implementation now involves this opportunity on Hickory Ridge to put some more affordable housing in that location.
Excellent. So you are a designated entity created by government, town meeting. You're proposing a policy, and the town council should be your partner in helping to advance that policy, is what I think you just said.
Absolutely, as should the Planning Board and Community Preservation Act, even though they also need to have town council approve their own actions. It's important that actions are generated there to support the development of affordable housing.
Terrific. Thank you for your great work. Thank you as well. It's wonderful to have you a partner here in town. And thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you again on the next show.